Welcome to the Hidden Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Homer Hargrove, and I know it's been a minute since our last episode, but it's been a little bit crazy for me as I have been trying to take care of some other initiatives and things that have been taking more time. But today, it's going to be a special episode as we are talking about something that shows up in our families, in our leadership, in ministry, in business, anywhere where you're trying to get people to believe in something that you're building. And that is us talking about how to overcome objections. If you've ever found yourself in a place where maybe you feel discouraged because you didn't quite get it, or maybe your idea, your product, your mission, or maybe you just as you're trying to explain something, maybe you just felt like awkward as you're trying to almost like convince the person of what you do is being meaningful. Maybe you got asked a question and you felt like you didn't know how to properly answer it. What if any of this is hitting a nerve for you, then this episode is perfect for you, because the truth is people rarely say yes or agree right away. Whether you're leading a movement, selling a product, or inviting someone to simply join something meaningful, you've got to learn how to face resistance and move through it without giving up or getting bitter. And we're going to break this down into three key pieces: believing in what you're offering, being interested enough to learn deeply about it, and actually practicing real conversations. And so as we start this, I want you to really broaden your horizons of what overcoming objections mean. This is not just like this sales gimmicky idea, but you have to understand that even in basic beliefs or principles, especially if you're trying to share your faith, you are going to have these moments which are, in layman's terms, textbook objections. People that disagree with what you're trying to share with them. And what we talk about today is how to be able to, in a sense, just have normal conversations where these objections don't feel like these roadblocks or these conversation stoppers, but we're going to really build our confidence in the process as we learn to care about what we talk about. So let's get into the first point, which is belief is the foundation. If you don't believe in what you're offering, why should anyone else? And this is a really core value that you have to kind of like settle in your heart. And before you work on your pitch or your answer to objections, which we'll get into like the nitty gritty there, anything before strategy, you've got to check your conviction. Do you actually believe in the value that you are inviting people into? Whether that's a service, a ministry, a product, a vision, or even just your faith. Belief is the foundation, because objections are going to come. People are going to say, I don't need that. I've heard it all before. I don't have the time. I'm just not interested. And if you don't deeply believe that what you're sharing is worth it, then you'll back down right away at the first sign of hesitation. You'll feel that insecurity immediately rise up, and you'll feel this overwhelming sense of anxiety that you're a hypocrite for almost agreeing for them. And belief gives you boldness. Belief keeps you showing up even when it's awkward. Belief reminds you that you're not just being pushy, you are being faithful to what you feel called to do, what you're called to share. You know, I'll give a couple examples. I remember early on in my faith, and me and some others went to a college campus to witness people and just share our faith. And we were doing as we were sharing the gospel with like just complete strangers. We'd walk up to a person and start trying to share the gospel, and we had like a little strategy that we were using. And so often we focus on the strategy or like the method that we're going to use before the conviction. And this friend of mine that at the time, he starts having a conversation with someone, and he's going through this little strategy we had. And then the person just simply said, well, I just don't know if I could, I don't really believe in the Bible because it has a lot of contradictions. And this friend of mine who was trying to share the gospel says, well, yeah, I guess you're right. And he just like agrees with the objection right away. And I thought to myself, like, what a terrible response. And the truth is, maybe on the appearance, the surface level, there's objections. Anything you go into, there's these surface level objections. But your job, what we're talking about today, that conviction is believing in what you're doing, to where when you face a surface level objection, you're not doubting everything in the process. It's almost like I've seen people, again, staying in the lane of faith. I've seen people try to witness to others, and by the end of the conversation, it almost like they're like borderline converted to atheism. It's like that their conviction was just not solid as they were going in. They had a good intention. Maybe they even felt like a social pressure from the church. But without that conviction, you are gonna just crumble at in the moment of objections. And going into like more of a business practice, for me, I used to do door-to-door sales and selling home security. And the specific company that I started with, I learned over time that it was a manipulated program. Like it was kind of based off of misleading the potential customer at the beginning. And I had a big problem with that. And so I changed my strategy because it couldn't meet my conviction. Starting a conversation with someone based on a lie, I couldn't believe in that. It felt too slimy. It felt wrong. It was against my morals. And so I changed my strategy to where rather than lying to the potential customer, I would tell them like, in a sense, the reality, like, hey, you're going to have a lot of people come to your door because you just bought a home. And that being said, I'm one of the people that where my company sends us out to new homeowners. And so it's like I'm still saying what needed to be said, but I'm exposing like this reality. Instead of most homeowners were like super confused, like, why are all these salesmen coming on our door? But it was this moment where I was able to match the product I was selling to a conviction, and to where I felt like I was doing a service. Like I was equipping these people, like giving them a heads up because they were very frustrated. And I was like, hey, this is going to happen. One thing that could help is put this sign on your door, etc. And it was able to match my convictions, and I was able to believe in what I was saying. And it wasn't this slimy thing that I constantly doubted. And so whatever it is for you, you have to establish what it is that you believe and about what it is you're trying to talk about. Whether it's a PTA meeting, if you're trying to get other parents to get involved and volunteer with your kid's school or something like that, or whether it's with actual products you're trying to sell. Maybe you're trying to make a network of other nonprofits, anything like that. Whatever it takes, you're going to have to start with this foundation of conviction. You're going to have to know why you believe what you believe. You have to know why you're doing what you're doing, and even write it down. Make it a single sentence of why you do what you do, why you want to talk about it, and that alone will take you so much farther when it comes to overcoming objections. Now, let's get into number 2, which is being interested enough to learn about what it is you're trying to talk about. Confidence isn't just about passion, it's also about competence. And if someone asks you a basic question about what you do and your answer is vague or hesitant, that's a red flag, not to them, but to you. And you have to get curious enough to learn more deeply about what it is that you're offering. Not just what it is, but why it matters, how it helps, how it connects to real people's problems. And you should ask yourself, what makes this different? Or what makes this helpful? What kind of person is this actually for? How has this changed my life? How can I communicate this? And if you sell something but you don't really know the details, people can feel it. If you promote a message but you don't know why it matters, people won't listen. The more that you know your mission, the more naturally you're going to talk about it. And the more naturally you talk about it, the less salesy you're going to feel, because and the more people will trust you. Going into that example of faith, for me, faith is not just this thing I do on Sundays. Of course, I'm a pastor, right? But like even before doing any ministry, it was something that I was passionate about and I wanted to learn more about. And the interest in learning more was not just from, I would have my own curiosities to where I would have a question or a thought or an objection myself, and I would want to find the answer. I was curious. On top of that, as I would try to conversate with people about my faith, I would run into objections that I didn't initially have answers to, where I knew in my heart that this objection shouldn't stop them. But I didn't know how to articulate that. And so I would be interested enough to research and try to navigate how should I address this kind of objection in the future. And as I built my internal inventory, it now is so natural. I could talk to anybody about faith at the drop of a hat. It's something so easy for me now because I've been interested enough to learn deeply about it. And that's why even when I go to places like recovery centers or even in church, we do like feedback time all the time where I have complete strangers that I'm opening up to ask any question, talk about anything, bring up any objection that you want, and we could talk about it right here. And that happens time and time again where I'm able to overcome people's objections on the spot, publicly, in front of others, because I've taken this time to have an interest enough to be knowledgeable, to be curious of these of how to overcome these objections. Y'all dig what I'm saying? And so I'm making this big push of faith, but the same should go for whatever other area you're trying to promote. If you're just trying to get people to go to volunteer for a meeting, you should really have this inspiration of think about, like, say you're just trying to get people to volunteer for like a church parking lot group. And they need help in the parking lot team, and it's not very inspiring. It's hot outside. It's summertime. How are you going to convince them? And the moment that you ask someone, you say, hey, we're looking for volunteers for the parking lot. Would you like to volunteer? And then all of a sudden you get a question, well, what would I be doing? Oh, well, I guess you'd be in the parking lot. I'm moving cars. Well, do I need to wear a vest? Is there cones? Like, it's almost like these immediate questions that would come up. And if you're not curious enough to even know why, that person is most likely not going to be invested to volunteer for this spot, right? And we could go down the line. I could give example after example to where just whatever it is that you are trying to have conversations about, be curious enough to learn about it. Be interested enough to learn about it yourself on your own time. And as you do that, you will be more equipped when you're having real life conversations. Now, that goes into our last point, which is practice makes powerful moments. And it's this idea that you have to practice talking about it out loud with real people. And you can read all the books, you can write out perfect answers, but nothing replaces actual conversations. You don't get better at answering objections by avoiding them. You grow by facing them head on again and again. Even if you feel like you did a terrible job, go out and try again. And it might look like practice sharing your mission in one clear sentence. You can practice talking that out loud, but then you start sharing it with other people. How does this sound? Get comfortable with awkward silences. Learn to ask good questions instead of giving long explanations. Sometimes when we feel insecure about ourselves, we end up over-explaining, or we repeat the same answers over and over. I almost start giving a longer explanation for what I'm saying. But it's this idea that we are fumbling over our words because we haven't had practice. Role-playing objections with a trusted friend or mentor might be something you can try. Reflect after having conversations. What worked? What felt off? And how could you improve? And most of all, get around people. You have to have real conversations. The more that you talk about what you believe in, the more confident and natural it becomes. And it's really hard to. I guess, like, more so, it's a hard pill to swallow to realize that the only way to get better at having conversations about these objections is by having conversations about these objections. And then afterwards, critically thinking, how did that go? Am I satisfied with how that went? Do I like how they responded, how they reacted? And when you have these critical thoughts about it, after having the real conversations, you will continue to get better as you force yourself into these positions where you are communicating about what it is you care about. And I'm going to just tell you guys, there's some things where it might take you a while to learn how to articulate something in the best way. For me, I try to position myself where I am practicing speaking. That is one of my professions. One of my major professions is public speaking. And so I go to many places and force conversations so that I can practice speaking. You know, at recovery centers, I have a lock and key method on how I go through my talks, where I could go through any one of my 5 talks that are all based out of my most recent book, From Death to Life. Nice little plug. And I could give any one of those talks on the drop of a hat. I would not need any notes. I'd be able to speak about them easily right off the bat, and I would be able to inspire and do a great job at any one of those talks any given moment. That's because I practiced doing those talks for years. And at the beginning, I made a lot of mistakes. There's several times I would go to a recovery center and I try to give the talk the best I could, and I left thinking like, oh man, that was lousy. That did not go well at all. I felt like I almost despired people. I think I might have just caused someone to relapse. It was like I did not do great at the beginning. But as I left those conversations and started learning how to overcome objections differently and practice this versus that, I was able to get better and better at it. And again, it's this idea that you need to allow yourself to drop the anxiety, you can't say don't be anxious, but allow yourself to even walk into the conversation with your anxiety. Allow it to, you're going to have to normalize a portion of that, because it's normal to feel anxious to talk about something you care about and not wanting it to mess up, okay? But the more that you have those conversations and the more that you believe in what it is you're talking about, you're going to feel less anxious, because you're going to really believe like this is the best thing for your life. This is great. This is a true benefit for you. And in fact, I'm doing you a favor. I'm doing you a favor by talking to you about this opportunity, this product, this faith, this belief, whatever it is. But it requires you to continue to practice and build up all these other assets within yourself. So all that being said, we need to understand that overcoming objections isn't about manipulating people, okay? It isn't about twisting people's arms. It's not about having the perfect rebuttal for every excuse. It's about being so clear, so grounded and passionate that people feel safe enough to open up and curious enough to listen. And sometimes it's not the first conversation that shifts someone's heart. Sometimes it's the 4th or the 10th. Your role isn't to force people into making a decision right now. While that is for some people believe that, you look at it like this: that you are planting. You're planting something in their hearts. You're planting something in their minds. And there's going to be sometimes you're watering, and sometimes on the spot, someone's like, wow, I never thought about it like that. And they make a decision right there. There's other times where you're watering it. There's other times where it might be the day where they agree. But the key here is to keep showing up. Objections aren't always rejections. Sometimes they just feel like they're not that they need to think about it more. They're not ready to commit to it. And objection, it doesn't mean that they're rejecting it right then. And so that's why, if you've ever had a friend that's a network marketer, that's not what we're talking about today. But even if you tell them no, in 3 months, 6 months from now, they'll send you a message and ask you if now's a better time, because they do not believe your objections as being rejection unless you completely tell them hard no. You have to understand that the same way that you are talking to other people, that these are opportunities to ask better questions and to show deeper understanding. So here's some questions to reflect on for yourself. Do I truly believe in what I'm sharing? Could I explain it clearly to someone who's never heard of it? Am I avoiding conversations or seeking them out for practice? What objections make me freeze? And how can I learn to respond with those objections with confidence? So all that being said, you're not called to convince everyone. You're called to steward a simple message that you've been given. And when you believe in it, learn it deeply and practice sharing it. Objections will stop scaring you, and they will start sharpening you. As for everything else, I'm so grateful for you being a part of today's episode. If it was meaningful for you, you felt like it made a difference in your leadership, go ahead and subscribe to this podcast. Leave a rating and review. Really help me out, help others to be able to see the show in their feed. But until next time, have a great life. Well, there you have it. I hope that this episode was meaningful and edifying for your leadership and your growth within your ministry and organization. Could you do me a favor? Could you leave a rating and review for this podcast? It'd really help me out and help others be able to see this show in their feed. You can also visit homerhargrove.com to be able to learn more, connect, or become one of our supporters. Until next time, have a great life.